Serafina Mills is the second daughter in a family where success has always worn one face: her father's. Isaac Mills built Cornerstone Freight, a mid-sized trucking and distribution company in Ohio, from a single leased truck in 1989 to a regional empire worth $180 million by the time Serafina turned 20. Her older sister Lorelei was groomed for that empire. Serafina was groomed for silence. For 11 years, while her family watched and quietly laughed, Serafina built HarvestRoute, a supply chain management platform connecting independent farmers and small food producers directly to regional grocery chains, cutting out the expensive distributors in the middle. They called it her Little Farmer app. They said it with the kind of smile you give a child who has drawn a house and called it architecture. The Mills family dining room, Thanksgiving afternoon. The table is full china, candles, a turkey that costs more effort than gratitude. Isaac Mills sits at the head, mid-laugh, wine glass raised. He has just said something about Serafina's Little Farmer app. The family chuckles politely. Serafina says nothing. She picks up her fork. Then the doorbell rings. Kathleen answers the door. She comes back with a look nobody at the table knows how to read. Behind her, Ephraim Brock. Silver-haired. Suit jacket. A leather portfolio under one arm. He scans the room, passes over Isaac, passes over Lorelei, and finds Serafina. He crosses the room. Sets his portfolio on the tablecloth next to the cranberry sauce. Ms. Mills. The board voted this morning. HarvestRoute controls 58% of Cornerstone's active distribution contracts. Effective today. A pause. They're calling you boss. Serafina did not smile. She had waited 11 years for this moment, and she had always known that when it came, it would not feel like triumph. It would feel like exhaling. Slowly, after holding your breath for a very long time, Isaac's wine glass tilts. The red bleeds into the white tablecloth. Nobody moves to wipe it. Cut to. But to understand why that moment mattered, we have to go back. The child who wasn't chosen. Isaac Mills built Cornerstone Freight the way certain men build things, like the company was proof of something he needed the world to accept about him. One leased truck in 1989, 3 routes across Ohio, a desk in a rented office above a laundromat. By the time Serafina was born in 1993, Cornerstone had 16 trucks, 4 depots, and a reputation for reliable regional freight that larger competitors quietly respected. Isaac was not a cruel father. That is important to understand. He was the kind of father who showed up to school plays, to soccer games, to graduations. He hugged his daughters. He said he loved them. But there are different kinds of love, and Isaac Mills had 2 different kinds for his 2 daughters, and everyone at the table always knew which kind was which. Lorelei, born 1989, 4 years before Serafina, was the kind of firstborn that families build myths around. Sharp, confident, effortlessly impressive. By age 10, she was asking questions at the dinner table that made Isaac set down his fork and actually think. She had his jawline and his ambition and his certainty that the world would eventually arrange itself around her. Isaac looked at Lorelei the way he looked at Cornerstone's revenue charts, with visible, unguarded pride. Serafina arrived quieter, smaller in some way nobody ever named directly. She was curious and careful and noticed things. The way the light changed on Tuesday afternoons, the way her father's voice dropped half a register when he talked about money he didn't have, the gap between what people said and what they meant. Kathleen, their mother, called her sensitive. Isaac called her sweet. Both said it in the same soft tone people reserve for things that are lovely but not useful. Serafina is 9 years old. It is a Saturday morning in October. Isaac is dressed early, car keys in hand, buzzing with the quiet energy he has whenever Cornerstone is doing something worth celebrating. A new warehouse in Dayton, $9 million in construction. The company's biggest facility yet. Catered lunch. A banner. Beaches. Lorelei is already by the door, dressed and ready, holding a notepad because Isaac had told her to take notes. Serafina comes downstairs in her coat. Can I come? I want to see the warehouse. Isaac looks at her, then at Lorelei, then back. You'd be bored, sweetheart. This is business stuff. Lorelei needs to see how the operations work. I want to see how it works too. Next time, maybe. There was never a next time. She stood at the window and watched the car back out of the driveway. Lorelei waved from the back seat. Serafina waved back. Then she went to the kitchen with her mother, and spent the morning reorganizing the pantry. And somewhere between the canned tomatoes and the dried pasta, she started noticing something. All these separate things that needed to get from one place to another and never seemed to do it efficiently. It was the smallest thought. She was 9. She had no idea she had just discovered the problem she would spend her life solving. 2 years later, at 11, Serafina builds a hand-drawn chart tracking the prices at 3 different grocery stores near their neighborhood. She has noticed that the same brand of canned corn costs differently depending on which store you buy it from, and she wants to understand why. She presents it to Isaac at dinner with the solemnity of a board presentation. Isaac is on his phone texting. He glances up. "That's clever, Sarah." He goes back to his phone. "Have you finished your homework?" Lorelei, across the table, is going through a Cornerstone quarterly report Isaac had given her. She circles something in red pen. Isaac notices. He sets his phone down. "Good catch," he says to Lorelei. "That's exactly what I wanted you to find." Serafina folds her chart into quarters and puts it in her pocket. She finishes her dinner. She says nothing. At 14, Serafina teaches herself web design from a library book and a borrowed laptop. She builds a website for a neighbor, Mrs. Clara Voss, who runs a small flower farm and has been trying to take orders by phone. The site takes Serafina 3 weekends. It has a simple catalog, a contact form, and a way for customers to pay a deposit online. Mrs. Voss pays her $80 in an envelope. Serafina brings the check home and sets it on the kitchen counter next to Isaac's coffee. "I made $80, she says. Isaac glances at it between sips. "Good for you, honey." He picks up the newspaper. "That's very entrepreneurial." He said it the way you say very entrepreneurial to a child selling lemonade. Like it was the intention that mattered, not the outcome. Serafina took the check to her room, deposited it herself, and opened a notebook. She wrote one line at the top of the first page. "There is a better way to connect people who grow things with people who sell things." She underlined it. Then she went back to the library. By the time Serafina was 18, the pattern was set and everyone had accepted it, including mostly Serafina. Lorelei was the heir. Serafina was the afterthought. The family was not unkind. They were simply certain about who mattered in a way that made the question feel settled before she ever had a chance to raise it. But certainty, she would learn, is only as permanent as the information you base it on. And the Mills family was about to run out of current information. The next chapter starts with a scholarship letter, a phone call she didn't make, and the day Serafina Mills decided to stop waiting for permission. Ohio State Computer Science. Serafina is 19. Full acceptance letter. She needs help with tuition, not much, the scholarship covers the larger portion. She asks Isaac once. He is at his desk going through Cornerstone's projections. He suggests she study business administration instead. Something practical. Something with a clear career path. The same week, without being asked, he writes Lorelei a check for her MBA at Vanderbilt. Full tuition. No conditions. Serafina does not argue. She does not cry in front of him. She thanks him for his opinion, takes out loans, double majors in computer science and supply chain economics, and graduates in 3.5 years. She promised herself, walking to the financial aid office with her forms, that this was the last time she would ask. Not out of bitterness, not yet. Just out of a quiet understanding that some doors only open from the inside. And this one was hers to open herself. A shared apartment, 2 roommates, a kitchen table that wobbled. Serafina works 2 part-time jobs. Early shifts at a distribution warehouse, deliberate. She wants to understand the floor-level mechanics of freight, and evening shifts doing freelance web contracts. In the hours between midnight and 3 in the morning, she codes. The idea has been with her since the pantry at age 9. Now it has a shape, a platform that lets independent farmers list their available inventory directly. Regional grocery chains log in, browse, place orders. The platform handles scheduling, route optimization, and payment. No distributor in the middle taking a 30% cut. No phone tag. No fax machine. She names it Harvest Route. It takes her 14 months to build the first working version. Her first real partner is Harlan Cross, 53 years old, a wheat and soybean farmer in rural Ohio, who has been losing money on distribution costs for 6 years. Serafina drives to his farm on a Saturday morning, laptop in a backpack, and shows him the platform on the hood of her car. Harlan squints at the screen. And you say the grocery store orders right here? Without calling Rufus at the depot first. They order here. You confirm. We route the delivery. You get paid in 4 days, not 30. Harlan is quiet for a long time. My daughter thinks I need to get with the times. A pause. I think she's right. He signs the partner agreement on the hood of the car with a borrowed pen. That was client number 1. Within 8 months, Serafina had 43 farmers and 8 grocery accounts. She had not told her family a single word of it. Year 1. Serafina mentions she is building a platform that connects farmers to grocery buyers. Isaac asks what kind of margins software companies make. She starts to answer. Lorelei mentions that Cornerstone just landed a new regional account. Isaac turns. The conversation moves on. Year 2. Lorelei asks, so how's the farmer app going? Serafina says it is growing. Lorelei nods the way people nod when they have already stopped listening. Year 3. Harvestroot has $4 million in annual revenue and 43 active farm partners across 3 states. Serafina is sitting at the same table. Kathleen sighs. Serafina is still doing her little farmer app. I keep telling her no benefits, no pension. She passed the rolls and said nothing. There was no point correcting them. Corrections require that the other person is paying attention, and attention in the Mills family had always been a limited resource, distributed unevenly, renewed annually at Christmas and never quite reaching as far as the second daughter. By year 5, Harvestroot has raised $31 million in Series B funding from a venture group based in Pittsburgh. Serafina hires her first team, 6 people, then 12, then 30. She moves out of the shared apartment into her own place, nothing flashy, a 2-bedroom in a quiet Columbus neighborhood. She drives a sensible sedan. She tells her family she is still working on the platform. At the next family dinner, Isaac talks about Cornerstone's new fleet purchase. 14 trucks, $2 million investment. Serafina listens. She has, in the past quarter, processed $18 million in farm-to-grocer orders through Harvestroot. She eats her dinner. She smiles when it is appropriate. She drives home afterward and opens her laptop. She was not hiding. She was waiting. There is a difference, and she had learned it from 11 years of watching what happened to things that showed up before the world was ready to see them. It was in the 6th year that Harvestroot began, quietly and systematically, onboarding the grocery chains that Cornerstone Freight depended on for the majority of its distribution contracts. It was not revenge, not exactly. It was simply the natural result of building something genuinely better. But Serafina would be dishonest if she said she hadn't noticed. Hadn't chosen, when there were multiple cities she could expand into, to expand into the ones where Cornerstone was the dominant player. Some choices are business decisions. Some are personal. The best ones are both. 18 months before Thanksgiving, Isaac Mills sat in a board meeting and listened to numbers he did not like. 3 major grocery accounts Cornerstone had held for over a decade, had moved their distribution to a company nobody at the table had heard of. A tech platform. Something called Harvestroot. Some kind of farm app, said Rufus Haskins, the head of operations, sliding a printout across the table. They're undercutting our quotes by about 22%. Isaac studied the printout. What do we know about them? Small. Columbus-based. But they're growing fast. He made a note to have someone look into it. That was all. He went back to the quarterly review. He had no way of knowing he had just described his daughter's company. No way of knowing that the woman who built it had eaten at his table 3 weeks earlier and listened to him talk about Cornerstone's challenges without saying a word. 3 years prior, Cornerstone had licensed a route optimization software tool from a company called Meridian Analytics. $340,000 per year. The software was legitimately excellent. It had cut Cornerstone's routing inefficiencies by 17%. Ephraim Brock had approved the contract personally. What Ephraim did not know at the time, what no one at Cornerstone knew, was that Meridian Analytics was a subsidiary of Harvestroot. Serafina had not engineered it that way deliberately. The acquisition had been a standard business move. A small analytics startup with strong route modeling technology, worth absorbing into Harvestroot's platform. But when the integration was complete, and she realized Cornerstone was one of Meridian's clients, she had chosen to say nothing. She had not lied. She had simply allowed the silence to continue. And in business as in family, silence is sometimes the loudest thing in the room. 11 months before Thanksgiving. Serafina is in her Columbus office. A modest space, exposed brick. A whiteboard covered in logistics maps. Her assistant tells her there is a call from a man named Ephraim Brock, CEO of Cornerstone Freight. She picks up on the second ring. Ms. Mills, I'll be direct. Your platform has taken 58% of our active grocery contracts in the past 18 months. I want to know if that was intentional. A pause. It was a consequence of building something better. Whether it was intentional depends on how you define the word. Silence on the line. Then unexpectedly, I respect that answer. I'd like to meet. What for? Because I'd rather merge with you than watch you finish the job. She agreed to the meeting. She did not tell her father. They meet first in Pittsburgh, a hotel conference room, just the two of them. Ephraim is 61, careful, intelligent. He has run Cornerstone for 7 years. He built what Isaac built with better management instincts. He has reviewed Harvestrut's financials, their growth rate, their technology stack. He makes no attempt to negotiate from strength, because he understands he does not have it. In the second meeting in Columbus, he proposes a merger. Harvestrut's platform and client relationships folded into Cornerstone's physical infrastructure. The trucks, the depots, the freight licenses. Harvestrut as the controlling entity. Combined valuation. $240 million. Serafina listens to every word. She asks 3 questions. About employee guarantees, about existing contracts, and about the timeline for board approval. She does not ask a single question about her family. She could have told Ephraim who her father was at any point. She didn't at first because it wasn't relevant to the business conversation. And then, after the second meeting, she didn't tell him because she realized she wanted to watch her father's face when he heard it himself. Not from cruelty. From the need, after 31 years, to be seen in the right room in the right light, by the people who had always looked past her. During the due diligence process, one of Harvestrut's legal team flags a vendor in Cornerstone's accounts payable. A consulting firm called Finch Advisory Group. 4 years of contracts, $612,000 in total payments for market research services. The legal team requests the deliverables. Nothing comes back. The firm's registration is traced to a Wyatt Finch, but the business address is the same as the home of Marmon Turlow, Lorelai's husband. Serafina reads the report on a Tuesday evening. She does not call anyone. She puts the document in a folder and labels it Thanksgiving. Serafina drives a sensible sedan to the Mills family home. She parks behind Lorelai's husband Clyde's newer vehicle. He had upgraded 6 months ago, paid for, as she now knows, partly by invoices that never produced any real work. She carries a single dish, sweet potato casserole made herself, and a bottle of wine that costs less than it tastes. The house is the same as it has always been. Colonial, Connecticut style, manicured lawn, American flag by the door. Inside, the same smells. Roasting turkey, candles, Kathleen's good perfume. She breathes. She goes inside. There was a version of this day she had imagined for years, the version where she walked in and said everything, showed them the numbers on her phone, made them listen. She had let go of that version a long time ago. What she had instead was better. The truth arriving on its own schedule in front of everyone with documents. The family gathers. Isaac at the head of the table. Kathleen directing traffic from the kitchen doorway. Lorelai and her husband Clyde seated together. Lorelai already holding a glass of wine. The conversation moves the way it always does at Mills family Thanksgivings. Cornerstone first, everything else after. Isaac talks about the third quarter. Clyde asks about the new depot in Cincinnati. Lorelai mentions a client she personally closed. Then Kathleen sighs in that particular way, passing the gravy. Serafina's still doing her little farmer app. 31 years old, no benefits. Isaac chuckles. She's always been the creative one. Lorelai, not unkindly but not kindly either. You should look into consulting, Sarah. You could probably get a decent rate with your tech background. Serafina picks up her fork. I'll keep that in mind. Isaac cutting the turkey. You know, if you ever wanted to understand real logistics, you could always just ask me. 40 years of experience right here. She let the words land and settle. She had heard versions of them for 11 years. They had never stopped stinging. She would not pretend otherwise. But she had learned what to do with a sting. You breathe. You wait. You let the room keep moving. Kathleen opens the door. She comes back with a look that doesn't belong at Thanksgiving. Ephraim Brock steps into the room. 61. Silver hair. Leather portfolio. He scans the table: Isaac, Kathleen, Lorelei, Clyde, 2 cousins, Uncle Harlan, and his eyes move past all of them. They find Serafina. He crosses the room. Isaac starts to rise. Ephraim, what are you? Ephraim does not look at him. Ms. Mills. He sets the portfolio on the table between the cranberry sauce and the breadbasket. The board voted this morning. Harvest Root now controls 58% of Cornerstone's active distribution contracts. Effective today. He straightens his jacket. They're calling you boss. The candles burn. Someone's fork touches the edge of a plate. The sound is enormous. Isaac's wine glass tilts. Red spreads into the white cloth like something permanent. Isaac's voice comes out very quiet. What is he talking about, Serafina? He's talking about the merger, Dad. Harvest Root merged with Cornerstone this morning. I'm the majority stakeholder. Lorelei. That's not Harvest Root. Is your little that app? Is a $240 million company. As of today, it owns the controlling interest in Cornerstone Freight. Ephraim, opening the portfolio. There are 3 documents that need Ms. Mills' signature. The asset transfer, the board restructuring confirmation, and the employee continuity agreement. Isaac stands, sits down again. He looks at Serafina the way he has never looked at her, with the specific confusion of a man whose map has just turned out to be wrong about everything. She signed the documents while her family watched. Her hand was steady. Ephraim explains methodically that the grocery accounts Cornerstone had been losing for 2 years had not gone to outside competitors. They had gone to Harvest Root. Every account. Serafina's company. You took my clients, Isaac says. I earned clients, Serafina replies. You were charging them more for less. I offered them more for less. That is how the market works, Dad. You taught me that. Ephraim adds almost gently. The grocery chain contracts represent approximately 58% of Cornerstone's active revenue. The board felt a merger was preferable to the alternative. The alternative, everyone in the room understood, was watching Cornerstone bleed out slowly while Isaac figured out why. Serafina gathered her copies of the signed documents. Ephraim thanked her, shook her hand, and left. The turkey sat untouched in the center of the table. The candles burned down. Nobody moved to clear the plates. Serafina folded her napkin, set it on the table, and picked up her wine glass. She finished it quietly. She had not raised her voice once. That was important to her. She had always known that when this day came, she would not shout. Shouting was for people who needed to be heard. She had the documents. She had the board vote. She had 31 years of being told she was the small one, the creative one, the sweet one who would never quite understand how the real world worked. And she had built a $240 million company out of the kitchen pantry she had been sent to reorganize instead of the warehouse she had been told she would find boring. She didn't need to shout. The numbers spoke at the volume she had spent 11 years teaching them. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, Harvest Root's integration team has completed its initial forensic review of Cornerstone's internal accounts. Serafina calls Lorelei to what was formerly Isaac's executive office. She places a single sheet on the desk. Lorelei looks at the number. $612,000. Where did you get this? From your own accounts payable records. Finch Advisory Group. 4 years of contracts. No deliverables on file. Those were legitimate research engagements. They were invoices sent from your husband's home address to a company your father built and your sister now owns. I have the registration documents. A pause. The money needs to come back. 90 days. That is the only offer I will make. Lorelei stares at her sister for a long moment. You've become cold, Serafina. No. I became precise. You never notice because you were never paying close enough attention. The same forensic review turns up something more significant. Over 8 years, Isaac had been using Cornerstone Company accounts for personal expenses that were never disclosed to shareholders. A lake house in Pennsylvania coded as an operations facility, Flights to 3 golf resorts coded as client entertainment. A vehicle for Kathleen coded as an executive fleet lease. Total $1.9 million. Serafina presents the findings to the board at a formal review. Isaac sits across the table from her for the first time in a room where she is in charge. Isaac, I'd like to speak to the historical context. The historical context is in the documents, Dad. All of it. She looks at him steadily. The board will decide on remediation. I'll recuse from that vote. The board votes for full repayment. The lake house is sold. The vehicle is returned. The Tuesday after Thanksgiving. Isaac arrives at Cornerstone's headquarters for a scheduled meeting. The reserved parking sign near the entrance, the one with his name that has been there for 19 years, has been replaced. The new sign reads, Harvestrut Executive. His badge still works. His office is still his for now. But the sign is gone. He sits in the lobby for 4 minutes. Serafina is the one who comes out to greet him. Dad. She extends her hand. Not for a hug. A handshake. Come on back. He shakes it. His hand is not steady. She had not ordered the sign changed. Her operations team had done it as part of the standard rebrand. But she did not correct it. She let it stand. Some things need to be seen plainly before they can be honestly discussed. Lorelai and Clyde list their house 3 weeks after the confrontation. The restitution payments begin the following month. They are quiet about it. No announcement, no explanation to family. But the house goes on the market and the family notices. At a brief, subdued Christmas gathering, smaller than usual, fewer people, no catered anything, Kathleen asks Lorelai quietly if everything is all right. We're making some adjustments, Lorelai says. She does not look at Serafina. Serafina passes the bread and says nothing. By January, the integration of Harvestrut and Cornerstone is ahead of schedule. Employee satisfaction surveys show a 28% increase from the prior quarter. Ephraim Brock remains as CEO. Reporting to Serafina's board. 3 of Cornerstone's largest grocery accounts, which had left for Harvestrut, are now processing through the merged entity. Forbes runs a short piece, Heartland Tech. How a Columbus woman quietly reshaped regional freight. Isaac reads it in the lake house he had to buy from the company at fair market value. He reads it twice. Kathleen is not a villain. She is someone who followed Isaac's lead without seeing what it cost. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, Kathleen calls Serafina on a Wednesday evening. Not about Cornerstone. Just to talk. I didn't know, Kathleen says. I want you to know that I didn't know. I know you didn't, Mom. I should have asked more questions. About what you were building. A long pause. Yes. You should have. Kathleen's voice is very small. Are you angry with me? Serafina looks at the ceiling of her apartment. She thought about that carefully. Anger was the easy answer. The honest answer was more complicated. A kind of grief for all the Tuesday afternoons when Kathleen had sent her to clean the pantry instead of asking what she was thinking about. A grief for the version of a mother who might have driven to Columbus to see her daughter's office, or asked a single question about the Series B, or said just once, I think you're going to do something extraordinary. I'm not angry, Serafina says. I'm just still getting used to being in the room. It is a Friday night in December. Serafina is in her office late. The building is empty. She is going through the Q4 integration report, good numbers, strong numbers, and she finds herself sitting still for a long moment not reading. She had won. By any reasonable measure, she had won completely. The company was hers. The fraud had been addressed. The family, for the first time in 31 years, looked at her with something close to acknowledgement. And yet she sat in her office at 9:30 on a Friday, and the feeling in her chest was not triumph. It was something quieter. Something that sounded, if she was honest, a little like the girl at the window watching the car back out of the driveway. Winning had not filled that space. It had simply made it visible in a different way. A handwritten card arrives at Harvestrut's offices from Pearl Voss, daughter of Clara Voss, the neighbor whose flower farm Serafina had built a website for at age 14. Clara passed away 3 years ago. Pearl is running the farm now, and she is a Harvestrut partner. The card reads, My mother kept a printout of your first website in her recipe box. I found it after she passed. She always said you were the one who changed everything for us. I wanted you to know that. Serafina puts the card in the top drawer of her desk. Stayed there for years. 3 weeks before Christmas, a letter arrives, paper hand-addressed, which is so unusual that Serafina opens it first when sorting her mail. It is from Lorelei. It is 4 paragraphs long. No legal language. No defensiveness. Just a woman trying to say something true. She wrote that she had called Serafina creative for so long she had convinced herself it meant something generous. That she understood now it was a way of keeping distance. That she was not asking for forgiveness, not yet. But she wanted Serafina to know she had read the Forbes article 3 times and the only feeling she had by the third read was something that had taken her a week to name: pride. Serafina reads the letter twice. She sets it in the drawer next to Pearlvoss's card. She does not respond immediately, but she does not throw it away. The year was almost over. By any measure, financial, professional, personal, it had been the most significant year of Serafina Mills' life. She had merged 2 companies, uncovered a fraud, sat across a board table from her father, and watched a family that had always defined itself through one daughter quietly rearrange around the other. She had not burned anything down. She had not needed to. She had simply built something so undeniable that the old story could not survive contact with it. But there was still one conversation left. The one she had been putting off. The one she hadn't planned. The one she didn't know she needed. Serafina alone in her Columbus apartment. December 31st. Serafina does not attend a party. She orders food, watches the city from her window, and works through a light review of January's integration schedule. Her phone buzzes with New Year's messages from her team. Warm ones, real ones. She answers each of them. At 11:47 p.m., her phone rings. Unknown number. She almost doesn't answer. She answers. Serafina. It's Dad. A pause. Your mother gave me this number. I know. She told me she might. Silence. Then. I've been reading about you. Not the news. Old things. A profile from Ohio State's alumni page. An interview you gave to a logistics trade journal in 2019. I remember that one. You said. I wrote it down, you said. My father's company was the best education I never received. I just had to teach myself the curriculum. His voice is careful, fragile in a way she has never heard from him. I had no idea you were watching that closely. I was always watching that closely, Dad. You just weren't watching back. Silence on the line. A long one. I should have taken you to the Dayton warehouse, he says. Yes. I should have read the chart you made at 11. The grocery store one. Yes. I should have. He stops. There are a lot of things I should have done. I know. Another silence. Then. I'd like to understand what you built. Not as a shareholder. Not because of the merger. His voice breaks briefly. I'd like to know my daughter. The one who actually exists. Not the one I invented in my head. She stood at the window. The city below her was full of people counting down to something. To a new year, to a new start. To the feeling that a number changing on a calendar can mean something real if you need it to. She had never quite believed in that. She believed in work and time and the slow, stubborn accumulation of things that were true. But she also believed that some doors, once you built yourself strong enough to hold them open, were worth leaving open. I'll put something on the calendar, she said. January. We can start at the beginning from when I first had the idea. I'll walk you through all of it. I'd like that very much. Dad. Her voice is even. This isn't forgiveness. Not yet. I want to be honest about that. I understand. But I'm not closing the door either. A long pause. Thank you, Serafina. She sets the phone on the windowsill. Outside, the first fireworks go up. Distant, muffled through the glass, small bursts of color over the dark city. She thought about the 9-year-old in the kitchen pantry. She thought about the library books on web design. She thought about the $80 check in the Ohio State loan office and the 14 months coding on a wobbling kitchen table, and the first time Harlan Cross signed his name on the hood of her car. She thought about every Thanksgiving the word creative had been used to mean not serious. Every time the gravy had been passed over her head, and the conversation had moved on. And then she let all of it go. Not because it didn't matter. Because she had earned the right to put it down. By March, Harvest Root had expanded into 3 additional states. By June, the merged entity employed 340 people. Most of them former Cornerstone staff who had kept their jobs and their benefits. Ephraim Brock remained CEO of Cornerstone Operations and had begun privately, calling Serafina the smartest person he'd worked for in 40 years. Lorelei had returned the $612,000. The payment came in 2 installments on time with no drama. They had not rebuilt their relationship, not yet. But the letter was still in Serafina's desk drawer. Isaac had come to Columbus in January as promised. He arrived on a Tuesday morning, drove himself, and stood in the lobby of Harvestrut's offices for 4 minutes before Serafina came out to meet him. This time she hugged him. He cried briefly. She did not. But she held on longer than she needed to. She had not burned the house down. She had not needed to. She had outgrown it. And then on her own terms at her own pace she had quietly bought it back. The Little Farmer app $240 million. And finally impossibly the right room.